Hey guys, welcome back to the T.Skies live show. I am Devin. I am a Navajo artist here at the T.Skies and along with a special guest.
Hey guys, I'm Uriah. I'm with the Seminole Nation of Oklahoma, and we're just so appreciative of our fan base and our clientele, and we just really appreciate y'all buying from us and supporting us. And so we wanted to do something different today. We wanted to do a little do-it-yourself workshop and explain some techniques about how we do some of what we do with soldering and making some metal pieces. So thank you for joining us today, and we got some tools here set up, laid out for us to show you kind of what we want to get into today.
Yep, so right now I just want to give you guys a little brief about the soldering. Soldering is just mostly the tool that we mostly use so that we can be able to combine the metals together and to make sure they stay together and they don't end up kind of breaking up on us. And what we mostly use is just mostly some solder wire, and hopefully you guys could see that.
Yeah, it's basically fine metal welding.
Yes, fine metal welding, basically. And so this solder that Devin has in his hand, that's for silver, and there's different levels of degrees of hardness. There's hard, there's easy, there's extra easy, there might be a couple more, and there's strategy with which one you implement depending on where you are at in the phase of the piece that you're building. So this is just like wire. We're going to show you some real examples here in a minute, and Devin's got some further explanations about it.
Yep, just let me quickly show you guys a
Speed draws by Devin.
quick here and perfect. So, for examples, were some of these ones here. For when you're working with some of the wires one here, we happen to be able to determine their difference by doing the ends kind of difference. Where the one with the sharp ends here, that one is considered to be hard. And the one with the 90-degree angle, that one is going to be a medium. And the one with the loop is going to be an easy. And with the loop and a zigzag formation at the bottom, that one's going to be an extra easy. And what these means are what they have the percentage of silver in them. So the hard has 75% silver, 70% medium has a 70% silver in it, and the easy has a 65% and the extra easy has a 56. And what this means is that these metals can have only a little bit amount of silver in them, but they are still considered sterling silver, but they are determined by the amount of heat they can be able to process. To where hard, you gotta make sure the heat on it is very, very hot so they can be able to melt, and all the way down to extra easy where it doesn't take that much, where it doesn't take a lot of heat to melt it, where it'll just heat up just for a little bit, then later automatically it just melts right then and there.
It's quick and it's sensitive, that extra easy. And what Devin's referring to is like the tips of how we organize these wires, and that's the patterns on the tips. That's what matches those symbols that he had on the paper, just so that we can kind of denote what we're holding when we're on the fly, when we're working. That's what those symbols mean. It's just how we crimp the end of the piece of the solder that we have. And you can buy it like that too. Most places will sell it like that. It just helps us stay organized.
Identify it, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's for identification purposes to help us stay organized and efficient. And so you'll see, it gets a little bit more complex, but that's the basics. Different densities of solder that have different melting points.
Yep.
Hello,
Why do
kid.
we use though? Like, why is there a point for us to use different melting points for solder?
Great question.
That is a good question. And you want me to answer or you? Go ahead. Okay, so the reason why we have these different levels of silver solders here is because we want to make sure that we can put like many pieces together without having the problem of either melting it or accidentally kind of splitting apart those pieces without having. So one by one, where we go from the hottest one where we have to put in certain metal to make sure it stays there, all the way to where it's extra easy, where we can be able to add in another piece and not interrupt the other piece that we worked on previously. So it's to help us to get efficient with it and to make sure that all the pieces we have stays together.
Yeah.
So you see some of our pieces, kind of like I'm just gonna give an example, the bracelet number 12 yesterday, you saw all those pieces on it. Well, I don't know exactly how the artist did it, but it seems like he did the hard on the stones, and then it kept going all the way till the extra easy for the feathers themselves.
Yeah, so we use soldering for soldering multiple pieces on, so we basically can have 4 steps of soldering when you think about it.
That's right, Marco. And
Yeah.
if you look at complex pieces, you can see it's layered. And here's a little example right here, and we're going to do some of this stuff. And Devin's the master at this, so he's going to show us some examples. But this is called a bezel, and it's like your fence. And he's already soldered this, and that's what holds the stone. So the
So
stone.
that's already has 1 solder in it.
Yeah,
right?
that
So
one.
that's got 1 solder right there. So you'd use probably like a hard on that. And then you mount it to your back plate, and you set your stone, and then you mount your back plate to your piece, and then you have other little additional dots, or what they call peyote buttons, and different layers of silver that compound on a piece to make a piece complete. So that's why there's multiple layers of heat density solders.
Well, shall we get into it then? Shall we?
It sounds good, yeah.
All right,
Let's
so-
start by showing what we're going to be using today.
Alright, so for now, I just want to show you guys. I did demonstrate these yesterday, but just going to show them again if Marco could help me out with his zooming parts.
Yep.
So when I was taking the C&M class, we kind of did some little experiments to tell you guys that these are the different solderings that we do over there. Usually we make sure they are one soldered together, but I just want to show you individually on how they work. Where we have one that's just a nice good
I think we call that a butt solder.
a butt solder, yep. And this
Edge
one,
to edge.
yep, just edge to edge silvers just soldered together. And I did copper so that you can see the silver on how it actually forms between the butts of them.
Wow, so you can mix metals sometimes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Then later after that, all you gotta do is just clean up all that, and then later you'll be ready to go.
Very nice.
Yeah, but we'll use silver solder with silver and gold solder with gold, so you can't see the solder lines. It blends it.
Yeah,
Basically.
but to know the different solders you're doing with copper, it helps you determine the heat that you need to do on it and gives you practice on it.
Nice.
So it's just kind of like these guys, where we call this kind of like sweat solder. That's where two pieces actually soldered together.
Yeah.
Nice. 2 flat plates.
Yep.
One on top of each other.
Yep, now to show you, and then later these two are a 90 degree solders on them. One that is a nice good sheet of metal. The other one just kind of a post, where you'll be able to make the post earrings as well.
So that's what we'll be doing today.
Beautiful,
And
Devin.
in school, at our college where me, Devin, and actually one of our other coworkers, Diego, learned everything, we would have to do tons of solder samples for the whole semester just to practice soldering.
Yes, so to do all that was very annoying at first.
Is this your first time doing solder samples since college?
Pretty much, yep. Well, not really. I did some practice once when I started here, because I've been away from making jewelries for quite a while, and then later, when I started it, I actually mixed up the solderings and ended up messing myself up. So I had to redo it. I was like, oh man, I got to do this annoying thing again.
Nice.
So solder, then yay, I'm back at it.
Very
I
good.
just want to say hello to all of our guests today. We have Susan. Hi, Susan.
Hey,
Terry.
Susan, welcome.
Hi,
Welcome,
Kim. Hi, Elise. Welcome, everybody. Let us know if you have any questions in the comments. And
Yep. If you guys have any questions, just answer them down below. Then we can be able to help you out, and especially for all of you YouTubers too. So just you guys enjoy the video, and hopefully this is a good lesson for you guys.
All right, let's
All right.
show what tools we're going to be using today.
All right. So the tools we're going to be using.
Zoom out for you.
So I guess we want to start with safety also, and that's kind of the main priority as we go. So personal protective equipment such as eyeglasses, earmuffs, gloves, if you feel like you need them. Eyeglasses is always a good standard to have, but then also the safety of the surface that we're going to be working on.
Yep.
So we have a bench that's made out of wood, but we're not going to work on the actual wood, so we're going to buffer it with these tile plates that are ceramic based, I believe.
I think they're pumice based, actually.
Pumice.
Pumice.
Okay. So,
Yep, that's right.
And what's the strategy of a pumice based deal?
For this one, it helps to absorb the heat to make sure it doesn't end up transferring right at the bottom here, and to help keep the heat within this area to make sure that the heat does not end up going into the woods and to end up where we end up starting fire.
Nice.
So that's what these are these two white bricks are for. They manage to help keep the heat. It's a heat protection from the wood, so that we can be able to do soldering on here, and to make sure that if we are soldering, it does not stick on them, and where we can easily just peel them off.
Yep. And they're all dirty because they are used. These are this is the equipment from our shop.
Yep.
This is what a jeweler's workshop looks like.
And you can see my hands are already dirty from touching it, and that's how dirty these things are. And well, we all be able to get used to it. And don't worry, we all do wash our hands afterwards, so don't worry about that part.
Most of the time.
Yeah, most of the time. But like Alex Maria said, safety first. That we do have this little air vent right here. This little blue.
It's a fumigator. Yeah.
Yep, it'd be able to help absorb, it helps suck in some of the smoke, some of the heat residue. When we're heating it, then it emits kind of like a chemical solution, to where it won't hurt you as much, but it will get you sick. So this will be able to help absorb all that, to make sure that it's filtered out, and to be able to make us all safe here.
Yeah. And if you don't have one of these, you can do it in like a wide open space, like for perhaps your garage with just like a fan nearby.
Yeah,
Because we use a really high end one that filters out everything. There's actually like a whole box that goes to that, and it filters out to HIPAA regulations.
Yep.
So it's really useful.
Yep. And then after that, we also got this, what we call the Pickle Pot, and this is what we use to help clean out some of the silver or any of the metal that we have. We put it in here, and to be able to, because when you see me do this, you'll see that it's kind of discolored a bit, where it's not going to be kind of silver anymore. It's be more kind of like looking like a bronze, kind of black.
Looks charred.
Yeah.
Yep.
And in the business, we call that fire scale.
Fire
So
scale.
whenever you heat something, you bring the copper to the surface, or all the impurities to the surface. So we use protective stuff, and then we also pickle it with and pickle is just like a very diluted version of hydrochloric acid. And then it turns the silver back to white.
Nice.
Then and also I'm going to use this, our little tweezers here.
What is that called? Like a third hand?
Yep, and this little technology here, we call it third hand. And the reason why we call it this is because most of the times when we're doing stuff, we only have like a torch on our hands, maybe kind of like a pick on the other to be able to move it. But the problem is that we need something to put it on the silver, and we don't have any more hands. And but a warning, you do not want to use your mouth.
Yep.
Don't try to that will not work.
Good one, Devin.
So we use the third hand mostly for the perpendicular stuff, right?
Yeah, just to stabilize the piece.
It's just kind of, for example, like this little silver sheet, you'd be able to put it on there, and then I got another silver here, if you guys can see. Place it on there, and you'd be able to put that onto the silver and work at it at the same time.
Cool. So that's the third hand stand.
Yep.
And what's up next? What's right next to that? We have a yellow bottle of something.
Ah, yes.
Oh, the yellow bottle. That's the boric acid.
Oh, this yellow bottle. This the ones you're talking about. This one is actually a liquid flux. And what flux is it's kind of like a chemical solution, to where it's, I don't know how to term it as well, but just say that it helps to tell the solders that where it's the wet area, that's telling the solder that it needs to be fused there. It helps control the solder, so that in case that when you do solder, it won't end up kind of like splattering everywhere else. It'll just stay within that liquid area to make sure that the whole thing will be connected.
Yeah, it acts as like I think the best way to describe it is that flux. You can get it in multiple different types, but we use a liquid one. It basically is a buffer for the solder. It tells us that we put it where it's going to go, and then it'll only solder anything in that point, really.
In the solder, when we're soldering, which is basically fine welding, this solder liquefies into like a molten metal. This is what is the weld bead. And so that liquid Devin was explaining, it helps control and direct the flow of where the solder should go and where it shouldn't go. So it helps for precision work.
Yep. And let me do a little drawing here to show you guys, and I'll do that way.
Speed drawing!
Speed drawing!
Such a fast artist, Devin.
Thank you very much. So, just kind of like determine here where if we are going to put in the liquid, some of this flux here onto the silver or any metal you want, it'll be liquid just right along this line here, and to tell the silvers that this is where the heat is going. And also the flame is helping with it too, because with a little example here, what I'm showing is that when I'm soldering little two pieces together, when I'm doing the butt soldering technique here, when I'm soldering them, that this one's the solder. This little ball here, that's the solder here, and when I'm putting the heat onto the piece, the heat is actually drawing the the solder itself. So it's telling the silver to go that way.
But basically, the solder follows the heat.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So the solder will follow the heat, and to make sure that if it's staying on this side of the silver, then later it'll just make sure to heat up to make sure that the solder itself will end up flowing that way, and onto the liquid that the liquid is touching.
Cool.
Very good.
Yep.
So we went over the flux. Let's talk about the boric acid a little bit. What is that right there?
Boric acid. That one is a solution of a boric acid. Was
With,
it?
I think it's isopropyl alcohol.
Yeah, with some little bit of alcohol. You can be able to get these kind of like at a auto shop anywhere to be able to mix it together. And what this is actually a chemical solution to protect the silver itself. And it helps protect the silver because, like we were saying before, the fire scales, those things are very hard to try to get rid of. Even when we put it in the chemical solution to clean it off, then the flame on it, the
fire scale.
The fire scale, thank you.
Yeah.
Not thinking straight, but the fire scale, it may seem gone, but it's actually still on the silver. And when we're trying to clean it off and everything, it's going to be a lot tougher to be able to clean it off, to make it buff it out more. And there's still some spots, black, gray spots. And that this solution here helps protect it. It's kind of like a protective layer of it. The metal will still heat up and still melt, but the fire scale will not appear as much than it was before.
Yeah.
So this goes on before you apply the heat in the fire, and we put a little brush in here so that we can control the application of how much we're using, so we're not wasting. And also, it's very flammable, so it's dangerous. So you want to, you don't want to be too heavy on it. You
Yep.
just want to be mindful with how you apply it.
Yep, and for a safety reason, we're just showing this off on the table to show you guys all the tools that we'll be using. But when you are using something that's flammable as this, you gotta make sure to keep it away from you as possible.
Yeah.
Anything
And
flat
closed.
and closed. Oh yes, definitely tight, seal, and to not be leaking.
Yeah.
To make
I
sure.
have seen someone get second-degree burns from leaving that open and spilling
man,
that
that's
on
nice.
themselves.
Yeah,
That's
it's hazardous.
Yeah.
Very hazardous.
Working with
very,
hot
very.
stuff. So we talked about that. We talked about the solder, and we're going to be using a torch. You want to talk a little bit about the Silversmith Torch?
Yeah, there's a different varieties of torches. Where this one is mostly the basics that everyone's always like to use. It's just a one single hand with a single knob, and also it's just a propane of
Acetylene?
acetylene. Thank you.
Do us a favor. Hold
Oh
that
yeah.
up.
We use a big tank of acetylene,
Right here.
There it is.
and that's the basic silversmithing torch. There's many varieties that use propane acetylene, oxygen acetylene, oxypropane, but this one is the most common type, and it's the most versatile in my opinion. I love these ones.
Yeah, well, I was getting used to the little Smith torch that we have
Yeah,
upstairs,
the
but
Goldsmith torch.
yeah, but this one I got used to too. So that's the torch we'll be using, and I'll just show you a demonstration on how good this flame is.
Yeah, so
You
and you
see-
can make the torches different sizes. You can get different tips and stuff.
Yep. For this one, we're going to use the basic medium, or I guess
It would be like a 2. Like they usually number them, I think.
yeah. Or oh yeah, this one is number. Kind of numbered differently, but this one's kind of like the standard torches that everyone uses.
Mm-hmm.
So that one we'll be using for, and then next, let's see. Oh, and also the sparkers to help light
Yep.
the torches.
It's just a flint on metal. Creates a
Yeah.
spark.
Yep. And then there's just extra tweezers to be able to handle the
The hot metal.
hot metal, and also to grab some of the solder to make sure we don't end up burning ourselves.
Yeah, and I see you have files on the table. I just wanted to say, like, one thing I've learned from soldering is is that you want to make sure your pieces are flush. Like you can't just solder something that's like wonky. You got to make sure that it fits properly.
Yep.
We use a variety of files, but especially with like the perpendicular ones or like the butt solders. you
Yes,
wanna make
good.
sure.
Good point, Marco. So we have a whole variety of files here, and some of them are curved, some of them are flat, some of them are triangular, some of them are cylindrical. It depends on the piece. Their strategy with just making sure that when you're soldering a piece, that the pieces that you're soldering, they meet flush and flat. So sometimes you kind of have to altercate some of the pieces slightly with the files, smooth it out. That way it sits flat and flush, so you have a clean welding happening. So that's why we keep files on hand.
Just kind of like this little drawing that I just did here, another fast drawing here. To show you an example to where this one has a nice good flush on it, and this could be able to help keep the solders to be able to keep it together and be stable. And if it's uneven enough like this one here, then the solder will only get enough pressure, enough hold on it to where it will stay there, but with enough pressure, it will break around that area. So you gotta make sure that the solders are nice and flat to make sure that the connection will actually be connected.
Yeah, because we're fusing it, and you can't really get a good fusion unless you have things lined up.
Yep.
It's like screwing in a bolt; you can't strip it, you know. Okay, so I think that covered anything. You want to add anything? Do we have any more tools that we hadn't talked about?
Well, just want to add, we also have some additional water on the side just to help cool down the silver real quick, so we can grab it and just take a look at it and just keep continuing.
Yeah. And then we got all of our safety equipment. We got our
Yep.
pumice. We got our vent.
Yep.
I know Devin uses safety glasses. I do too.
Yep.
And I don't have my regular glasses.
Safety first, and also just in case, and now also during the pandemic, we also like to keep our mask on so that we can be able to work on it and without having to breathe in some of that leftover toxic that's
Because
actually coming in.
The alcohol from the boric acid will heat up and actually burn, and the flux will actually give off like some smoke as well.
Yep, so we just gotta be careful of that, and just hope that during this time I will not get blinded by how much fog I am getting with my glasses.
Oh yeah, Kim is mentioning something about her hair too. Like you
Yeah.
have longer hair, and it's whenever you're working with anything, like any machine equipment, you want to make sure your hair is back and tied up, or like your sleeves are up, and it's just nothing's gonna get in the way. We would not want to burn your lovely locks.
Yep, and also, just this one's just a little tiny tip of it for safety. When you're working with some heated metal, I would suggest wearing long pants.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
and closed-toed shoes.
Yeah,
and
for
closed up shoes, yeah, because oh man, I still remember the last time that I accidentally wore short pants, and I was making a ring, so I would just grab hold of it, then later, when you know it, the entire thing just slipped out of there, and it rolled down, actually rolled, kind of like rolled down my entire arm,
Oh, Devin.
down my side, then later
Oh my god.
then later down my leg. I ended up having it look like I have a line going down me like this.
Oh my gosh. Well, no haphazard stuff happening today.
Yeah.
Knock on wood.
Knock on wood.
All right. So should we start some soldering?
All right,
Sounds
yes, let's go start showing you guys some of the soldering things that I will do for you.
And let's do a little zoom in first. Which one did you want to start with?
Well, I want to start off with showing you guys that from hard to extra easy on soldering all of these 5 pieces of silvers here that we have here. So what we got is just a tiny little triangle, a little square, kind of a little rod here. See if I can be able to shine that. There we go. This tiny little rod here, a big silver, and just a medium silver. All of these are just leftovers that I have, but I will show you guys on the methods on them, where I can do all of these soldering samples here, all in one go.
That's the true test of a solder sample. If you can make sure that you don't make any of the other solders break apart from heating it.
Yep.
So right now, what are you doing right now?
Right now, I'm just filing down. I'm filing down the edge here so that to make sure that it is nice and flat, and to make sure that this entire seam will be able to solder quite good to make sure that nothing will break during this whole process.
And that's what we're talking about with making everything line up and flush.
Just gotta do that.
And there's parts of the desk that we can't really show, like there's the bench pin and stuff, but I saw you were using it back there. You're just using the edge of your desk and you're filing flat like that.
Yeah, we have some other additional stuff, but we totally forgot to set that one up. But
Yeah,
just
it's all good.
We'll show you guys the methods of it. I also forgot to tell you, I'll also be using what we call a soldering pick.
Yeah.
So that when we're touching it, we'll make sure that we're touching the silver itself and the solder without burning ourselves.
Yeah.
So
And they're usually made of titanium.
Yeah.
Those are the good ones, yeah.
Yeah.
titanium, they don't absorb as heat as much as steel, and to make sure that they do not flex, do not melt as fast as any other metal, and so they will help us to control that.
Yeah. Lets us push around the solder a little bit. Make
Yep.
sure we get the perfect line.
Yep. So what I'm gonna do is now just gonna add some of the boric acid solution on there to make sure that I don't end up getting any
Fire skill.
fire scales on them. I can't even say that now. And what I'm
It's alright. It's hard to explain what you're doing while you're doing it. That's the hard part.
Yeah. Then afterwards, all I'm doing is just gonna burn it off. Oh, I should even have this thing on.
Yeah, we might talk a little bit louder because our vent is going to be kind of loud. But yeah, you can see the green flame from the alcohol, and that's
Yep.
honestly my favorite part of soldering is that seeing that green flame.
So that's what I'm gonna do. And what are you gonna say?
I was just going to say that flame helps purify the surface of any kind of toxins or any kind of oils or any kind of impurities, so we get a clean finish.
Yep.
Cleans it and it burns off the excess what is it? Alcohol. Yeah. And
Yep.
it just leaves the boric acid there.
Yep. And to make sure that when I'm using a liquid flux, to make sure that when I'm doing it, it does not end up kind of like putting. How would I describe it? Like not putting water with other water, where it won't end up. When you dip it in there, it won't end up kind of like splashing around. I'll make sure to keep it in that particular area. So I got the flux solution on there now. And now I'm going to use hard solder.
So that's a nice technique. You have little containers with pre-cut solder, right?
Yep.
So you don't have to mix them up.
So it's just kind of like some examples here. So that in case that you got, because when you're doing these, it's hard to tell the difference between them. Even if you try, then you just end up going to mess up on your technique. So what I suggest is getting some little containers. It doesn't matter what. You can use any containers you want. And just label them from hard to extra easy. And to make sure all your silvers you have in there are that particular solder.
Yep.
So now, what I'm going to work with is hard.
And we're using hard first because that one takes the most heat. So as we keep going down the line, we won't be melting the hard solder, and we'll only be melting the one that's the softer heat, basically.
Pretty much, yep.
A moment of truth. Cutting down little sheet solder. Oh, and you're using sheet solder, which is fun.
Yeah, I didn't even talk about that, didn't I?
That's okay. We can just go for it. We'll talk about it a little later.
Alright. And this one I actually learned from another place, another silver place, where it's saying that if you heat up the solder all the way to a ball, then that's how also can help you out with the control of the solder. To where if you do not heat it up, then later all it'll do is just spread around and it'll just make a big mess. But this itself, it'll only just it'll manage to solder into the seams and to make sure it does not end up going kind of like crazy and just make a mess of everything. Alright, so everything is clear, no hazardous near me. Make sure
No paper towels, no open containers.
no chemical solution around me, flammable, so ready to go. And starting at 3, 2, 1. There's my heat. Now start to heat up my
And that
silver.
white stuff is the flux actually crystallizing. So it turns into a crystal form that kind of helps guide the solder.
Yep.
Another technique Devin likes to do is he keeps the flame moving. And he circulates throughout the entire area so that he tries to have an even application of the heat. Because if you stay with heat too long in one area, it's possible you could burn through it, create holes, and create problems and melt your silver. So there's technique to keeping that flame moving.
Not only that, if you are soldering it, two pieces like this, you got to make sure that you're heating the entire piece, because if you tire one, then the one piece will only get the solder, not the other piece.
And it goes pretty quickly. You can see how fast that is. And you'll see like a small shiny puddle, and that's the excess solder. But yeah, you see how quick and easy that was. Oh, yeah, let's show that off a little bit.
Yep, you can
And
see
then there's
that.
your seam.
You see the seam actually being covered there. Now all I gotta do is just dip it in water.
Satisfying.
Yep.
The sizzle.
Then after that, as you can see, that now I got the two pieces connected.
And there's that fire scale.
Yep, you can see all that fire scale there. So that, and now my next trick,
My next trick, this is a magic show.
my next magic trick. For this one, what I'm going to do is going to solder it nice and 40 degree. And I make sure I did manage to file the side of it down to make sure it is nice and flat, so I can be able to put it onto there.
Nice.
And for this one, I'm going to have to use my third hand as well. See how it's stationed? All you got to do is just set it there.
Yeah, third hand is definitely a very accurate name for that. But
Yep.
it's not as wobbly as our hand, which is good. It's very
Yep, you'll see it just
yeah.
now. Before I get started, like always, got to put some alcohol on it to make sure that it is protected and I won't end up getting any fire scales on it.
Yeah, boric acid alcohol.
Close. Just got to close it up, put it away, burn out some of this alcohol on it so that the borax acid will be able to stay on it. Then later when I'm doing it, I'll make sure that the seam is nice, have flux on it. And for this one, now I'm moving from my hard solder onto my medium. So now I'm going to use some of my medium solder, this one.
And again, for those who have just joined us, we're talking about strategy with the types of solder that we use in sequence. So first we started with a hard, which it's a little bit harder to melt. Now we're stepping it down one level to a medium, which is just a little bit easier to melt. So it requires less heat, which will decrease our risk of altercating our first weld, because this weld is so close to our other weld. So that's the strategy behind using the sequential step down of the intensities of solder.
Yep. So now it's time to solder this piece together. Now it's going to burn that. Put on the solder. And what I'm doing here is that I'm actually soldering on the other side of the flux, not towards it, because like we were saying before, the solder only follows where the heat is being transferred. So if I'm heating it on the other side of the solder, then I can be able to get a nice good clean soldering onto the piece, the 90-degree piece, and at the bottom as well. So just heating all that up, just heating it, hopefully I do not melt this entire thing.
Kim had a funny comment. She said, years ago I had a Silversmith artist friend refer to himself as an alchemist. Yeah, I'd say we're pretty close to alchemists.
Yeah, true.
I think you might have been flirting.
And there, see, quick and easy. And you're using the what's it called? The solder pick to move that across that line.
Yep, to be able to help control the solder, to move it across so that I can be able to get a nice even coat of silver on it.
Yep. Alright. that's the 90-degree.
Yep, that's the 90 degree. And now just cool it down once again.
Nice. You got a little shark fin on there.
Yeah.
Yep,
Beautiful work, Devin.
thank you.
And
So now,
one thing that I want to mention, usually between each step we would pickle. Like if you're working on a full piece, you would pickle before each one. But we don't really need to do that today because it's pretty simple. It's just a solder sample.
yeah,
And the pickling takes, maybe 5 to 10 minutes to get it
Yeah.
good. So,
Depends how hot the mixture is.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
we put the crock pot mixture on high and just let it soak in there, and it kind of just gets away any of the tarnished, fire scale, burnt, crisp look. It just helps clean it
yep.
as we go.
We'll see if
And just like that. It's
yeah,
nice.
I cleaned a good amount of it off really fast.
Yeah, just
Wow.
for a minute. That was quick.
That was like 10 seconds. Dang, that's gotta be some good pickle.
Oh yeah. And plus, I also was using the pickle alcohol too. So
Ah.
it helps protect it a little more, and when you put it in there, it cleans it off as fast as it did.
We get you some copper tons so for that. But keep going, keep going.
Alright? And now, what I'm going to teach you guys is also now the little technique of the sweat solder, or the two solders soldered together flat. And for this one, I'm moving from the medium solder now onto the easy solder. So this one is going to be a lot more steeper, and I don't even have any.
There's some copper tongs for the pickle.
Oh, thank you,
Okay.
Microsoft.
So now I'm going to use some of my easy solder. Ow.
Yeah, and usually we have to cut up our sheets of solder or our wires with it.
Yep, so what I'm doing here is cutting up little bits of pieces so that I can be able to use them. Right there.
When he
So,
says little pieces, it's like little pencil heads, maybe a little bit bigger than like a lead tip of a pencil that's been sharpened. It's just very small units.
yep.
You
Because I don't
need
want
a
to.
lot, for sure.
Huh?
You don't need a lot of solder.
No, you don't need a whole bunch of it. You're going to just use a little bit of mount, because once the solder is has a complete setting on it, then later it won't move at all. So again, I'm going to add in some of my alcohol on there, on both this piece and the big piece. And it's going to put a little bit because you don't have to do a lot of it, just enough to keep it protected. After that, what I'm going to do is just burn them off.
That extra alcohol, that cool green flame,
Yep.
the alchemy green flame.
There we go. Now I'm going to set that aside real quick and just going to focus on this piece itself. This nice good silver piece here. So what I'm going to do is just going to add in a whole bunch of them on here. You can see it's just kind of a green liquid on there. And what I typically do is just turn all that off, because when you're doing it, it gets really bubbly.
Yeah, it might make the solder jump off.
Yep.
So it's good to start before you put that on.
So now just putting the solder on here.
And you're keeping the flame to the side just because you're kind of feeding it with like a radiant heat.
Yep.
And then you start to circle it a little bit more.
Just going to heat up this entire piece.
The solder starts to ball up a little bit and then it just turns into a big pool. You can see it on there.
Now you got a puddle of solder.
Yeah, just as simple as that.
Boom, boom.
Boom. Very good.
And then afterwards, I'm going to just see if I can solder it right around here.
Yeah.
What I typically do is just a hurry, quick thing where it's still nice and hot. So just place it on there.
You can tell Devin has been doing this for a while because he's just going for it. I love it. I love to see it. Devin. Oh, you want to turn it around so we can see that side? There we go.
There we go. So now I'm going to solder this piece onto this piece without melting my 90-degree angle and my butt solder.
We have a YouTube commenter talking about Kev Yazzie.
Kev, I had the same path. I started out with copper. Copper's a little less forgiving, and it is a little bit harder to work with. And silver's a lot easier. And then gold from what I hear, is even easier.
Oh,
Devin's
gold
worked
is
with
super
gold more.
soft.
Marco's worked with gold more. But you're right, the tools and the materials, it definitely adds up, and there's not a lot of grace on this metal, and mistakes can be costly. As you can see, this thing's just going to flatten out, and these pieces are going to get flush as that solder melts. Devin's just doing that the dispersing technique where he's keeping that flame moving. Very beautiful technique. And he got it. And he used the pick to kind of sandwich it down a little bit, add a little bit of pressure. And that's definitely, that's going to be hard to get off. That's on there so well.
Yep. So there you can see it's nice and soldered on there, and now it won't be able to come off.
Yeah. And this is a technique you don't see too often, but for any of you who've seen pieces with like repousse like attached to it, like there's repousse that gets soldered to cups, and that's how they do it. They sweat solder. So they have to prepare the pieces first, and then they have to put them in line, usually with like a third hand. And especially like, and we're sweat soldering on a flat piece. Imagine doing the
Yeah, there should be one in the back.
curved pieces.
So yeah, and just like that, I have already 3 solders on there. All staying together, now breaking up.
Yeah. And we have one last one.
Yep. And the last little technique would be the bar.
Yeah, the wire.
Yep, just a little tiny wire here. And this is what this technique is what we use when we're doing post earrings. You know those post earrings that just stay 90-degree angle up and it doesn't come off? This one I'm showing you right now, right here. So all you ladies out there with post earrings, this is how it's actually made.
Yeah. And those are notoriously hard because posts are tiny amounts of silver and they melt really easily.
Yep.
Through any soldering process, you risk melting your piece. So if you're not good at soldering, you'll melt something. Let me focus on that edge really quick before you start.
When I said back there, I meant the one in here.
Well, look, they weren't in there.
Oh really?
Yeah.
There we go. Put things up. Alright, so now it's time to solder on the posts. And now, just to show you, I'm moving from my easy to the extra easy. So this one will not take that much heat to melt. It only takes a little bit, then after that, right there, it just melts right there, woo! So you can say this one is my very last step on making the jewelry. Just like that. Just gonna turn that into a ball real quick. There we go. See? Like the others, it took a while, but this one did not take long. So I'm putting just a little amount just on this edge here. And now I'm just going to burn it off.
Yeah, and this one will be a quick solder because it's the easy, so it'll melt the fastest.
Yep, and same thing like the 40, like the 45, like the 90 degree. I'm putting it on the solder on the opposite side and melting it and heating it on the other side.
And then heat will pull it towards itself.
Yep, so the solder itself will be pulling towards the heat. So in other words, I'm heating the bar and the piece together so they can be able to pull it on the bottom and the top.
Yeah, and if they're at different heats, like if they're not at the same heat, or like the temperature of the rod and the...
Right there.
Yeah, and there's a great solder right there.
Beautiful, Devin.
And that one's a hard one because sometimes it'll only solder to the plate, it'll only solder to the rod, but to get it to perfectly fit and solder together, that's a good technique.
Yep, and you can see, I'm doing everything I can to try to take it off, but it does not want to come off.
And there we go. And then we just throw that in the pickle.
Yep, just cool it down real quick so I can grab it and show you guys real quick. Well, it's as simple as that. Three,
Yeah.
four, 4 solders in one piece.
Yeah, and before you get any piece of jewelry, this is how dirty it gets just from heating it. And then there's so much more work that gets done. This is
And
one
then later
step.
the hands themselves. So you're wondering why our hands always gets dirty? Well, we were working before and now you know why.
But that's also part of his natural, beautiful skin complexion.
Make it
Dark
look
skin.
pretty.
Oh my god.
Alright, so that is the entire piece. Putting it into a pickle pot.
We'll pickle it first,
Yep.
and then once we get it pretty clean, there's a few different techniques for polishing, which we're not going to get into today, but we have some different buffing wheels with some different compounds that are some different grits that are designed for different materials, whether it's copper, silver, gold. And then we have tumblers with bead shot with different solutions of liquid that go in there and clean it up. So we'll save that for another do-it-yourself seminar.
Yeah.
But right now we're just going to finish it with a pickling solution. It's going to get most of it clean.
And if you guys have any demos you would like to see, please let us know in the comments or message us. We have a lot of plans to do some great demos. Myself, I would love to. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a casting demo at some point.
Nice, Michael.
That'll be fun.
Yeah, that'll
So
be
yeah,
great.
let us know if there's any particular thing you've always had questions about. We'll show it.
Yep.
And then what are we going to do next, Devin? What do you want to show us?
And now I'm going to show everyone on how we get a bezel cup.
Yeah.
Where, like Maria was saying before, to make this little piece here stay onto the silver. You see all of our jewelries with the little fence, he calls it, or bezel onto the plate to make sure it stays there. I'm going to show you guys the steps that I do to do it.
Yeah. And this one has already been soldered. If you look at the bezel by itself, see if you could show us the solder seam. So the focus point is right in the center, but yeah, there's a little seam right on the side.
Right there, I think you guys can see it.
Yeah.
Right there.
So we already have done one solder to that, and that's hard solder, right? Or did you use?
A hard solder.
Yeah, and that's hard too because bezels are notoriously really thin and fine silver, so you can melt them really, really, really easily.
And what gauge do you think this is? Maybe 22?
Oh no, it's a lot thinner than that.
Yeah,
24?
bezels.
A lot thinner.
28?
It could be
Not that
28 to
thin.
30.
26?
26 to 30 is the usual bezel.
Yeah.
That's
I don't
referring
usually
to
go
the
past
thickness.
28 because then it's just way too thin.
Yeah.
Yep.
So not only do we use different grade solder, as far as hard, easy, extra easy, but then even the thickness of the gauge, which is the thickness of the wall of the metal that we're using for the soldering, there's also strategy in that too. And so we use maybe a 26 gauge on these bezel fences that we're about to use, and then the back plate that we're going to mount them onto might be 24, 26, maybe a little bit thicker, maybe.
It depends on the feature we're working on, but
Yeah, part of it's preference in the construction process of, how beefy do you want it to be, how big is the stone going to be, where's it going to be located, is it going to be a pendant, is it going to be a bracelet, is it going to be earrings? There's a lot of variables that go into it, and you kind of learn as you go, and sometimes you make mistakes, and that's part of the learning process. But hopefully you'll learn some stuff here that we could save you some time on your journey with.
So we had a quick question from someone on YouTube. They're asking, there we go. Now we can talk.
there we go.
What is
now
the
we-
difference between using borax and using flux?
So borax is the boric acid. Well, borax that's not borax. So borax is a different compound. I really never used it, but some people have used it for doing some soldering, like using it as flux.
Yeah.
But it's just a similar compound. Flux is just something that is in the industry and you can buy from like places like Rio Grande, and you can buy it in different forms. Like this is
Just
you can
a
buy
liquid form, just
Yeah.
a liquid, and there's some others too, kind of like a clay version of it, or
and
kind
then
of
there's
like
even some that come in a syringe that are solder and flux together, and you just like syringe out a little bit of this solder. There's so many different types, but this is the most common that'll be used.
Yeah, if you go to like a wholesale jewelry supply shop, which we aren't, we do wholesale some stones and some materials, but we don't focus on that. We're more of a gallery, and we make custom things, and we have stock product lines too. But if, like Marco was saying, is that if you go to like a wholesale place where they sell a lot of stuff retail and wholesale, there are so many different kinds of chemicals and solutions and solvents and mixtures, and it gets deep. I mean, we got a small library of books that go into depth
Oh,
of the
yeah.
chemistry of silversmithing,
yeah.
and that gets into the atomic structure of the molecules and annealing and different techniques. So
Yeah.
it gets deep. We're just trying to keep it topical, high level, so you can watch this and walk away and know a few things.
And we're lucky enough to be in Albuquerque, New Mexico,
Yeah.
which is where Rio Grande Jewelry Supply is founded, and their warehouse is here. And
Oh,
we have
yes.
a great connection with them. They help
Yeah.
us out.
And a couple other shops here too. And I see Tattoo of the Sun just commented on coming and visiting us. Anybody, you guys are welcome to come visit
Yeah.
us.
Yep, you guys come visit.
We'll make
see-
time to show you some
Come
stuff.
down to Albuquerque whenever y'all get a chance.
Yeah, we're here in Albuquerque.
Yep.
Beautiful. It's getting cold, but we're
Oh
here.
yeah, it's getting chilly.
Oh, I love the cold.
Yeah, Devin
Oh.
likes it. Some people are made for it. I'm not as much, but I still love it. I'm not gonna.
Yeah, I'm one of the cold people too. Like I was telling someone, I was like, I want to move to Washington someday. It's like, I don't know if you'll like all the clouds. All right.
Alright, so now is for all of you guys, I'm going to show you on how I make all my bezel cups.
Yeah, so this will be in one of your pieces when you're finished, right?
Yep,
This is
and
going to be in a piece. So if you're watching this, and then if you're seeing a Devin artist sale one day, be sure to remember that which one it was, and they can see which one they.
I'll
if
just
they
show you
wanna
guys
buy it.
that this is the turquoise that I'm working with right now, and this will fit onto this bezel.
Oh wow.
And then think about this turquoise. I think it's got a little bit of backing, which is almost like an epoxy, so it adds a little bit of strength to the
Yeah.
stone. Not all stones have that. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. This one, right here next to it, sorry, Devin, this one does not.
Yeah, it's,
So
it's
it
pretty
just-
common for it to have it.
Yeah, and it's okay. It's actually a good thing. It's not a bad thing. So I just wanted to touch on that though. That's a backing.
Awesome.
Alright, so let's get started, and here comes the noise again. Starting now.
Just think of it as white noise of the ocean.
Soothing.
Soothing ASMR with your silver.
Soothing tones with artist Devin Smith.
There we go. Now we're going to add the flux onto
So
this.
you're doing the bezel right now. You're soldering that edge together.
Yep, and what I'm using right now is, where did I put it? The hard solder on it. So here we go. Just gonna, due to the fact that this is a very thin metal, I'm gonna try to see if I can give it just a little bit of heat. Putting the solder into it.
Yeah, it's just melting down nice and smooth.
Yeah.
Yeah, just gotta do it, and there.
Devin is so good at this. The risk you run is if you heat it up a little too much, you'll
This-
watch it. It'll start glowing red, and then it'll just dissolve and disintegrate, and you've ruined a piece.
So
This
it just
is
turned
a-
into a peyote button at that point.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Then you got some scrap. But Devin is so skilled. He got it hot just enough.
Yep, and now as you can see, now it's staying together.
Beautiful work.
Yep, and now just going to test it out to see if it fits on here. And it fits. There's a little example here.
Like a glove.
Dang. Look at that. Oh my gosh. Move it towards the center of the solder block a little bit. There we go.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that's gonna be a great
That's a
piece.
tight fit.
It's a snug fit.
Yeah. You don't always have to get that snug, but he's that good. So.
I'm excited to see when that's finished. I want to see that one.
Oh yeah, same here. And now I'm just going to show you guys real quick on the method of soldering a little piece of silver onto a bezel.
Yeah, now we're doing the backing.
Yep, and for this one, I'm working with this turquoise here, the one that Maria showed. And surprisingly, this one is, y'all going to be surprised, but a tortuga.
A tortuga?
A tortuga.
Oh my gosh. That one's good. Oh, I'm excited.
Yep. So, we got the piece now ready. Just going to put some of the borax. Now just going to put some of the alcohol on it to protect it.
And while Devin is doing this, we have a comment on YouTube saying, how do you save silver shavings with sawing? I know it adds up on my floor. So what we do, we have specialized desks. As you can see, we have our artist desks right here. And can you pull out that little center part.
And what you have too is right here on the top, you got this little peg that extends out.
Yeah.
And you work on that peg, and that peg is hanging over this tray, which is like a little collector. So that's how you save the shavings, and then you just sweep them up in one corner.
Or your
Right now
lost stones.
we have some, I guess, still wool.
There's shavings of different stuff in there.
Yeah, but we use this to help collect them. Then later, after that, we can either try to reuse them, or if we can try to pick out some of the garbage out and just put them away.
Yeah. So you definitely collecting shavings is a thing, and then you
I
reheat
do
them.
I save my shit, especially if you're working with gold.
Definitely.
Oh, yes.
Like any
definitely.
higher end metals like silver, like people don't do it for copper and bronze, but silver and gold, you'll save your shavings.
You'd
for
be
sure.
surprised. I mean, especially in like a couple months, it'll add up.
Oh yeah.
We try to shave all ours here with like our buffing machines. We have vacuums, then we collect that, put it in a bag,
Nice.
and at some point or another, we'll send it off to a foundry, which
Wow.
includes all the trash and all the other stuff that's inside of the buffing compound and stuff.
Ah yes.
And they'll burn everything out and actually give us like 90% silver back.
Nice.
And usually you can get like, I don't know, like a couple ounces to a pound depending how much you've saved up.
Wow.
Yeah, so it goes a long way to save your shavings. Whenever I'm doing any sawing, I put it into a little bag.
Yeah.
I've saved so much from that.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
And now, moment of truth. Starting these two pieces together.
Yeah.
Here we
And
go.
another big loud noise coming up.
Let's see.
So now it's just burning. For now, it's just gonna.
And what density of solder are you using for this one?
For this one now, I'm using the medium.
Where he used hard on the bezel fence, which is that wall that seats the stone, and now to connect the back plate with the wall, which is the bezel, he's going to use a step down. Now we're using medium solder.
And you're putting it on the inside or are you putting it on the outside?
I'm putting it on the inside because when you're doing that, then when you're doing the cleanup on it, it won't be a hassle trying to clean up all the gunk off of here. That helps control it inside to where if I'm heating it just around it, then like I said, the heat will actually be the solder will be transferred where the heat is at. So if I'm going in a circle, it'll go around the entire bezel.
Yeah. So we put a few pylons, that's what I've always called them, little pylons of solder on the inside, around the four corners usually. Depends how big your piece is.
Yep, and once again, it's going in my circular motions.
Yeah, so Tattoo is asking, we use the medium after the hard so it doesn't melt the bezel, right?
Yeah, that's
so
yes.
that's another thing to do, but we're using it so we don't melt the hard solder that is already holding the bezel together.
And so basically it goes hard, medium, easy, extra easy, maybe one more in there, but as you get easier, the melting point is easier.
Yeah, the melting point becomes lower.
So it doesn't require as much heat to melt the medium versus the hard, so that way we don't disturb the weld of the hard as we're soldering the medium.
Oh yeah, and you can see the heat on that piece. It was glowing for a second.
And if you look real close while he's doing it, as he's evenly dissipating that heat, those little bits of solder that he put in there, they just kind of follow the heat and they just mend and weld in all those gaps. So it's hard to see it on the camera, but it's a smooth process you can watch. It just seeps in there. It's like liquid molten.
And we'll throw that in the pickle. And afterwards, you can actually see the whole solder line around it, which is really cool.
Yep, and let's see if I can grab my little beginner, my little test run here. Managed to clean out just a tiny bit of it.
Yeah, and after that too, you can always take like some hummus with some water or soap and water and just brush it. And brushing it with like a paper towel or a toothbrush really cleans it up.
Oh yeah, that's really cleaned it up. Look,
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I just clean it up there and check it out. It's all nice and clean.
That's pretty clean.
Yep. So here is what I have from the entire piece.
And that's just it clean before I polish it. And this is just an example piece, so we probably won't polish it, but
Yeah.
that's
so
pretty clean.
If you're in school, this is basically what you'll do in your if you're first learning to be a jeweler. Solder samples.
Well, you'll be practicing on some of these copper ones first.
Yeah, without silver. But yeah, if you're new to jewelry, if you're a jeweler, this is a great technique to get really good at soldering. and it just helps you learn how, like all the different types, and it gets you familiar with how things melt too.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's no doubt your first one you might even melt some stuff. Like,
Yeah.
you could melt that copper. You could put some holes in it.
Mm-hmm.
Now I was just gonna grab my others to see how they're coming out. Just like we said, it only takes a few minutes just to clean them off.
The
And
most.
we're using copper tongs with the pickle because with pickle, there's a weird reaction that will happen if you use steel tongs in it.
Huh.
So
Yeah.
if you dip steel tongs that aren't stainless steel inside of it, it'll actually take some of it'll cause a reaction that starts to copper plate everything in the pickle.
And what that means that we'll end up getting the silvers to turn more into coppers.
Yeah. So if you're ever wanting to copper plate something too, you can use pickle. Yeah, that's what I used to do. I would just use some extra pickle and steel wool, throw something in there, silver, copper plate it.
And there.
That's your bezel.
That's your back plate.
With the back plate, can you see that whole line on it? Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
You did a really good job, Devin.
That was quick. That was quick too, Devin.
Yep.
You were so fast, dude.
And now with those extra corners on that back plate, you can snip them off. You can save those scraps as well.
Or if you want, you can be able to also add in some buttons on them too.
Yeah.
Buttons, wires, and whatever you want. So that's how this is made. And we can just either put some more designs on them, or if you like it just nice and plain, just shear it off, just kind of clip them off, and then later just file it down, and you have yourself a nice, good bezel cup.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And one of the questions we have on there is working with copper melting it different than working with silver? And the answer is definitely yes.
Oh, that most definitely. Copper, it helps that when you're heating up copper, it absorbs all the heat within the entire piece.
Yeah.
For kind of like this little piece example, this entire piece will absorb all the heat onto it. So when you're doing something like just a tiny little torch on it, it only heating a little bit of that part, but it'll heat the entire piece as well.
Oh yeah.
Where soldering, well, for silver, you're heating up only that particular area, just that big amount of area, and that's why I was moving it around so that the entire piece could be heating up nice and evenly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So with copper, it's definitely more conductive. With silver, it's softer. It has a lower melting point, but it's not quite as conductive. So it makes it a little bit easier to solder. But practicing with copper will get you super good. Like, that's how we all practice.
Yep, that's how we all learned.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, this has been our demo for the day. Thank you guys for joining us. Show us,
Yeah.
give us a little emoji if you've had some great fun while watching. We'll be definitely doing some more demos pretty sporadically.
Yeah.
It's just stay
Some
tuned.
stamping demos, some other stuff. We'll be throwing a lot in. But if you guys want to see anything in particular, please send us a message.
Yeah,
And
if you
you
guys-
have any more questions, let us know.
Or if
Yep.
you have any requests for custom pieces, Devin's an incredible artist, one of our best ones here. He's our residence artist, and we can do anything. So we're only limited by the imagination.
Yep.
So we appreciate y'all joining us today, and we hope you have a great rest of the week.
And now time for another one of my air talk of signing off.
Your speed talks.
My speed talks.
Big breath.
So I just want to say thank you to all the Facebook viewers on here. Thank you guys for tuning in with us. And if you want, you can be able to tag all your friends, share among your friends, family, your dog, your cat, the stranger, the homeless guy across the streets. Share with anyone that you like, and they'll enjoy the videos. And also to all of you YouTubers out there, thank you for tuning in with us. And if you guys like this video, all you gotta do is just hit that like button down below. And if you guys want to get more updated videos we'll do, then just hit that subscribe button and to hit the bell notification for notifications on our videos.
Nice.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. Well, we'll see you guys probably Friday. Who knows? Maybe tomorrow too.
Yep, so stay tuned for some of our jewelries. Until then, see you guys later.
Sayonara.